Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. We are here in Brookshire County coming into our Houston port on one of our oil boats, and in this video we're going to start to think about how we're going to start moving logs, planks, and tools around the map. Now before we get into our main project for the video, I wanted to come over into this area and make a few slight adjustments in order to help us earn money a lot more efficiently, and also do some slight changes in detailing and vehicle allocation as well. And so the first and probably most impactful thing that we're going to change here is our boat line, which after some discussion in the comments, I found out there's actually a much easier and efficient way to move goods around in this area. So we're actually going to split this long line into two separate lines, one which takes oil from the port, brings it over to the oil refinery, and then another line that takes the oil from the oil refinery, takes it to the fuel line, and in this case it will be completely full. And then after it drops off the oil at the fuel refinery, it'll pick up a full load of fuel, bring it back to here, and then the boats here will then ship it back into the Houston port. So now splitting up the line this way won't be perfect, as the return trip on fuel will be sort of hit or miss dependent on this line here. But if we get things running correctly, our line from the oil refinery to the fuel refinery will always be full, which will get us a bunch of money. And then at least the leg where oil comes from the port up to the oil refinery, that portion of the trip will also be full. And so let's pause real quick, and we will want to create a new line. So we'll come into our line manager, create a new line, and that will just simply go from here to here. And so the way we're going to set this up is at the oil refinery, it's going to load oil and unload any fuel that it gets from the fuel refinery, and then pretty much just the opposite from the fuel refinery. So we'll load fuel and then we'll unload our oil. And then as for this other line, we're simply just going to take off the fuel refinery portion of it and then adjust these. So load oil, unload fuel, that's correct. And then over here, we're actually going to have it load fuel instead of oil, and that should work out just fine. Now we'll have to move a few boats off of this line to the other one and even out our line rates across the board, but hopefully this will be a much better way of transporting all this oil. And so let's start off by just taking two of these vehicles and putting them on our new line. We'll let things sort of take a moment to spread out, and of course, because they're ships, they're going to take a while before resources start flowing as they need to, but I'm sure this will all start to work out once things get figured out. Alright, and so now that things have started to sort of settle in on their lines a little bit, let's take a look at our line rates. So coming back to our horse route, this sits at just about 200, which is where we'll probably want this one to go. So looks like we will have to add back probably a ship or two. Let's just give it some time for this boat to move away so we can duplicate and add a new one. And so now if we duplicate this and we wait for the line to update, that gets us to 178, which is still a good bit lower than I think we want it to be. So let's get one more, and that'll get us to 207, which I think is a pretty good number to sit at. And then if we take a look at the other line, this one's sitting at a line rate of 119, and I think that's fine. With two ships, there's not really much fine tuning we can do to that number. So as long as it's roughly 100, I think we'll be good there. So all we have to do, I guess, is let our resources start to filter through the line, and then eventually we'll start to see these boats coming back with full loads of fuel going back and forth. Now, unfortunately, what that does mean is some of the boats coming back from the oil refinery will be empty since the frequency is slightly different between these two lines. So the goal, I think, is about every other ship on here will return with a full load of fuel, but on average, that still equals to about a half load of fuel per ship, which is what we were running earlier. The only difference is this whole leg now runs completely full compared to what it was doing before. And then now coming into the port and doing some smaller stuff, we'll want to make sure that this truck stop can then handle a full load of fuel coming in here. If we take a look at the terminal, it can only hold about 60 units of fuel at a time, and I believe these can carry 90, so we'll want to be prepared for that. So this should just be as simple as finding our storage buildings, so our cargo storage, and then plopping that down right about here. And if we take a look now, any platform can hold, I believe that's 145 units, if I did the math correctly. Actually, it's 135, but still, it can still hold a full load of fuel that comes in here. Let's just simply clean this up real quick. We're not going to go too crazy. I just want to maybe get rid of this strip of grass between the dock and the building. And maybe we even come across here and have this turn into a dirt patch as well. Alright, and now that we have the port done, the last thing I want to do in this area is here at the oil well. I think I want to get this to end up with 2 terminals, much like we did with the farms. And then I also want to add a tiny bit more ground detail to here. If we take a look at the oil wells inside of the industry, they have sort of this dirty water texture to make it look like oil is coming out of the ground there. And I'd like to do that on these as well. We won't get into as much detail as adding gravel and everything under here, but I think that little extra detail right where the oil rig sort of touches the water is a nice touch. Alright, so now I'm pretty happy with how this area turned out. This truck station should work out pretty well for us now, and I'm actually pretty happy that all the resources are going to stay in this middle area, as it leaves a little bit of space here between these oil wells and the truck stop, so it still seems somewhat realistic. And so if we come back and just double check all of our line rates again, it actually looks like this number updated after we added the boats, so now this is up closer to 300, which I think is a little too high for what we want. And this line here is at about 142, so if we double that, that will bring us to about 280. So I guess there's not really anything we can do about this number. Now that is a little bit higher than what the city of Houston can take. I believe, if that number's correct, 150 for fuel is almost about twice as much as the city needs, so we definitely don't need that. However, I don't think we can afford to lose a ship here, as that would then bring our rate down into the 70s. Alright, so now since we're sticking with the higher 300 rate on our boat, we should probably adjust to that with our vehicles here. So let's get maybe increments of 5 and see how that goes. So looks like each one's adding just about a little over 25. So maybe 2 more. And I'm happy with a rate of 295. That's just under the 300, but I think that'll turn out just fine. The only thing we will have to keep an eye out on now is this unload stop, as this might prove to be a bottleneck. We'll probably have to wait for all of these horses to spread out on the line before we can really see that, but that is probably my main area of concern at the moment. And then of course the last line that we would have to worry about, our fuel line, which is sitting at about 96. Again, I'm okay with leaving this at this current rate since that is well over the 62 that the city is demanding. And of course throughout the video, this number is only going to continue to rise as the city grows. However, before the city gets too big, I'd like to come in here and add some future roads as well as fix up some of the existing grid that sort of went a little bit weird. Now that we have a good amount of money saved up, we can afford to do this in some instances. So especially Houston, we want to make sure that we're setting it off on the right foot and that things will go pretty well once the city starts growing on its own. Alright, so now we've deleted a lot of the roads that we didn't want to keep. We can start to build off of this grid. And first of all, I think we'll extend this road so that it intersects. Although this looks like it's giving us a narrow angle. I almost want to keep this, but that does create a very large intersection here. Let's maybe just simply upgrade this road and see what it looks like with the city streets instead. And so unfortunately it does look like this is a pretty unrealistic intersection here. It's just way too long. Although one thing I would like to maybe try is if we just build it anyway, delete this. I am more okay with an intersection that looks like this, and then I suppose we can just go off of a regular grid from this point on. We'll just have to keep an eye on this area and make sure that this intersection won't cause any issues, but from there we can pretty much continue building off of our existing grid. We'll actually first upgrade some of these roads. So like these roads, these crossing roads can probably stay because it looks like it's a lot of money to upgrade those to a wider street. And then we can extend this road. It's a little hard to line it up just perfectly because we can't really get it to snap straight. We sort of have to eyeball it. So I believe this is good. It looks good, so we'll build it. We can zoom in here. That looks pretty straight to me, so I'm okay with this road being here. I think then we'll get another, or actually I think we'll let the city maybe build this road because I think it might actually snap to the grids a little bit better. So if we can get it to make a road that goes this way that's perfectly parallel to this one, that would be much easier than us trying to eyeball it. Although something like this actually doesn't look too terrible, so I suppose we could just build it, and we'll see how that goes. We can get rid of one of the segments to make sure that we extend it perfectly straight. And this looks like a pretty good road, and then we just have to delete this end bit. And then over on this end of town, we'll want to continue this road straight, of course. And we'll actually curve it around to meet there. And then this road, we're still going to continue to follow the river, but I think at a certain point, probably about here, we'll just have it curve in and connect, or maybe we could just have it continue following. I'm not sure. I think we'll leave this open-ended for now, and maybe the city can come up with something interesting to fill in there. But then I believe the last thing we need to do is just extend a few of these smaller grids Now, this road I don't want to keep forever, but we will keep it for now. I'd like to move this down so it's a little bit more centered on the space here, but I don't want to get rid of all of these buildings in here just to fix that. So we'll wait until the city's a little bit larger before we do that. And then we have roads such as this, which can come across. And I believe this looks pretty straight. And then lastly, we have this road. We'll bring straight across yet again. And so I think this will be the extent of our upgrading for now. We'll actually come through and start locking some of our more major roads so that the city doesn't do anything too crazy with them. We'll actually leave that part unlocked. This all we will lock. And so I think this is a pretty good framework for Houston. Of course, it's going to take a while for it to rebound, but hopefully as this line rebounds as well, the city will reciprocate that in its own growth. Alright, and after letting this run for a little bit, it does appear that this unload stop is a bit of a bottleneck for us. So unfortunately, I think we're going to have to switch this to just a regular truck stop, and we'll have to figure out how we get this to fit in here nicely. Alright, and after some messing around, I think we have something that doesn't look too bad compared to what was here before, and functions much better than just the single unload stop. So I'm pretty happy with this. We can leave it here, and if we take a look, we've actually been earning a lot of money from this line. So let's just take a look and see how things have changed, if at all. So you can sort of see when we switched, things went a little south for a little bit, but immediately rebounded, and this line alone seems to be making about the same money it was before without all of this extra trip added onto it. And then this line here is, we click it, go to the finances, this one's doing very well, earning us almost 600,000 in just this one financial period. So I think that's closer to what we should be expecting from a line like this. And if we just click one of these boats, we can confirm they are traveling back and forth with almost a full load of each. I'm not sure why this didn't return full. I think maybe on this line, if we manage it, the Salt Lake City West line, we'll have it wait a tiny bit. Or actually, I'm not sure. Maybe that was just a mess up from a boat earlier. I'm not going to touch it for now because I don't want to ruin our line rates or anything like that, because overall the average should be that this line is full in both directions. So that's just something we'll have to keep a close eye on. But anyway, moving on from this portion of the map, we can finally get into the big project for today, which is going to be on the other side of the map, over here near Lincoln, where we're going to set up a tool line. And so to get an overview of what this is going to look like, we have this huge space sort of open right next to Lincoln, where we're going to put a couple of forests in. We'll place a few industries, fill this all in with trees, and then somewhere over here, I think we're going to get a sawmill, which is where all those logs are going to get turned into planks. But then from this sawmill, we're going to grab a train, which is going to take planks all the way over to this tools factory by Santa Rosa, where then those planks will get turned into tools, which a few will actually go back into Santa Rosa by truck, and then the rest will get sent back on the same train back to the sawmill, where we'll drop it off, and then that will probably get trucked into Lincoln from the sawmill. And so hopefully a train on a line like this will work at this stage in the game. I haven't really messed around much with it, but we are going to need two separate car types, since planks come on flat cars and tools go in box cars. So we'll see how that ends up turning out, but hopefully the train will make a profit both ways, which should be the sort of big money maker on this whole route. But of course, that will have to remain to be seen until we set it up and get it running. And so first, to set this all up, we're going to get some forests in here. Now, usually I like to use these random industries to sort of slightly inform us a general area where industries will go, but there's really not anything good in this area. It's just a bunch of random industries. There's no real production chains that are within reasonable distance that we could realistically achieve at this point in the game. So I think it's fair that we sort of make our own on this one, especially since this is just a large, flat, open area. So obviously something's going to need to go here, and I think this line is the perfect place for that. And so I actually kind of like this lake being here. We'll probably expand it once we get into detailing. We're not going to go too crazy with it, just make it a little bit more looking like a lake instead of an extremely sort of shallow swamp area. But let's come in here and find our forest industries. Now this is going to be pretty tricky with landscaping, as we'll want to be a little bit careful about where we place these things, since really it's the landscaping that costs the most money when it comes to this. So let's get our first forest industry placed right in here, wherever we can find the cheapest cost. Although, looks like 600,000 is probably about where we'll have to sit for now. We'll want to group some of these together, although we're probably not going to use all of them. We will want them to be somewhat close together when we do this. We'll have to find another good spot somewhere in here. And I think right in here, 350,000 isn't bad. So we'll place that one there. And I think we'll roll with that for now. We won't go too crazy. Once we do the detailing and landscaping, we might find better locations for some of these industries. But next, for the sawmill, I think I want that sort of right here at this junction. And I think something right about here will be pretty good for us. We'll delete this road, as we'll probably change up how this works. And then, so from this industry here, we'll probably follow this road, since it's pretty flat as it follows the water. And then we'll come over, bridge across this gap, bridge across this gap, and then land somewhere in here for the tools factory. Now we might also change the orientation of this tools factory slightly, just so it fits a little bit better with how our train is coming in here. But of course we'll save that for when we get to doing all of the detailing later. But now let's get a road connecting out here. And it'll of course be a small country road. And we'll want to sort of follow the low flat areas. So if we had our contour lines in here, we can see it stays somewhat flat in this area. Of course we will need to climb, as our industries are a little bit higher up. Alright, so now that we have this road connection in here, we had to do a little bit of messing around with it just to get this to work, because especially this industry is not on the flattest ground. So we had to get that working, but I think now we can set up all of our stations, sort of get the line running, and sort of have a little proof of concept there, and then we can move on from that. And so we're gonna get a truck station placed right in here about, as that connects to both industries. We don't have much room to slide this back and forth, so I think we'll just go for here for now. Once we do detailing, that will change. And then coming over to the sawmill here, I think first we'll want to flatten a lot of the ground around here so we can get a nice road connection. So we'll flatten out right in front of the industry. And then now that we have that, we can come in, add a road across the front, and we'll want to get this as close to the industry as we can. And I think that works out pretty well. We'll continue bringing it straight across and then connect down into this road. And so of course we'll need another truck stop over here, so we'll get one placed right along the road here. And then we'll need to get a train station in here. So to help us out with that, we're going to flatten a lot of this area so we can try to get the train station in. It's not going to be anything too crazy at the moment, but I think this will work pretty well for now. And then we'll need to come over and place another one somewhere over here. Alright, so now we have our train station over in Santa Rosa by the tools factory. And the last thing we'll need to do is get one of these placed, and then some unload stops over in each city. So here we'll get one placed right in the middle of where all those tools are going, and then over here in Lincoln, all of the tools are just about over here. And now I think we're ready to get all of our vehicles running. So we'll get a road depot placed right about here, which should be able to reach everything, although Santa Rosa will probably need one, but I think it should have one because it has buses, although I think we did delete that, so we'll just throw in another over here right by the tools factory, and that'll be fine. And now we can get our vehicles going. And so we'll start out with a few horses, as we'll need to set the line rate, but let's clarify everything here. So over here we want this to unload the logs. Up here in the forests we'll want it to only load logs, and we'll set alternate platforms since this will probably end up with a lot of vehicles on it. And now we actually need to build the train tracks, which we forgot to do earlier, but it shouldn't be that hard. I think we'll just flatten out this segment for a little bit and then just smooth it out. But from here, we can drag these tracks straight out of the station. We won't worry about adding a second set of tracks for now. We'll just get one train going back and forth. But then we'll pretty much just be following this road along the riverside here. Alright, and so we have our train track that comes through this area connecting the sawmill to the tools factory. We'll need to get a train depot placed somewhere. So temporarily I think we'll get that placed over here. I think maybe there's a better spot for it, but for now over here by the sawmill seems good to me. We can just connect it up like so. And then we can get our train running, just so we can see how it does and how much it's going to cost before we really start eating into our money. And so there's two trains that I really have my eye on that I want to use for this line, and it's either this 620 engine that we downloaded from the Steam Workshop, or this 440, the General engine. This one has a lower top speed, but it does have a little bit more pulling power, and so it's easier to halt, or it's easier to accelerate to max speed with a larger load. This one, however, has a much higher top speed but much lower pulling power, so if we were to use this one, it would take quite a while before it could get up to top speed. And so I think we'll build out our train using this engine first, and then if this doesn't look good or we don't like the stats we sort of end up with, we'll change out the engine and see what that looks like. But of course, we'll need some flat cars. So we'll grab maybe 5, potentially 6 flat cars for planks. And then for the return trip, we'll grab maybe 4 box cars, since remember, some of them will be sent into the city near the tools factory, so it won't be full enough. And it looks like it can get up to the top speed of the cars, which is 31 miles an hour in about 136 seconds, which I'm not a huge fan of. We're limiting the top speed of the engine with the cars, and so I think we might just switch out the engine. This one looks like it can get to its top speed a little bit quicker and also deal with some slopes, which we do have in the cases of where our bridges are. So I think we will go with this 440 engine, and I think this is a good size to use for now, although I think I would like to make this train a little bit longer once we start thinking about evening out the line rates and everything. So this train should be going out. We'll just have to again adjust this. So here it will be loading planks and unloading tools, and over in Santa Rosa it will be loading tools and unloading planks. And here's just a look at that train as it comes out of the train depot. Very nice engine for our first train of this series, and I'm very excited to see what this thing can do. And so let's quickly finish up everything else that we're doing. So let's grab a few vehicles to get the tools into Santa Rosa. So we'll do that, bring that over here, and then we'll grab a few trucks to bring tools into Lincoln. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of having such a long line being a point-to-point route with strictly trucks, but it is necessary to get the tools into the city and to get it to its end place, so hopefully the train can make up for a lot of that money that we would be losing by only running this as half full. Alright, now after waiting a little bit, we have our first set of planks heading over to the tools factory, and hopefully soon those will then get sent into their respective cities. But while we wait for this to sort out, all of our trucks that we've just added to space out and all of our rates to begin to even out and goods starting to flow, let's get into our detailing, and then we'll be back once all of that is done. Alright, and I think we're good enough with our detailing in each location, so let's take a closer look at them real quick while we're here at the tools factory. There's not really much to add because this industry looks pretty empty at its base level, so once it upgrades we might be able to make it look a little bit more detailed and busy in this area. But really we just added this road that wrapped around and a few buildings, and I think this is good enough for what we're using the tools factory for. We have our train station here. Again, it's nothing too special since we're not moving too many resources yet. And here comes our train. I think this is partly off because we were messing with the tools factory and everything, but over here at the sawmill, this area is tied together a lot better now. We added this whole portion here and this road. I think there's definitely more to be done here with maybe extending the road this way and filling in some stuff over here, but I like where it's at for now. And then what took up the biggest portion of this, the forest here with an insane amount of trees to really sell that forest look. We used the help of some invisible roads and the paint tool to really make it look like these are some secluded forest camps out here. And again, as we build this up more, I'd like to maybe add a few more industries in this area and then tie them all together. And so now that we've done all this, let's go through and adjust our line rates for everything. So starting here with our logs, I think I'd like to get this up to 200, maybe even 300, much like how we did the oil. So now actually seems like a pretty bad time to do it because our large cluster of trucks are coming in through here right now. So we'll give it a few seconds and get a lot more trucks on this line. I do believe if we take a look overall, we are just barely making money here as long as things stay consistent. And so now that a lot of our horses are starting to leave, let's start duplicating some vehicles. So let's do this in increments of 6. And again, the goal I think is to get this up around 200 or 250 really. So it looks like we're up to 175. We'll get some more. 207, 223, and one more. I think we'll leave it right there at 240-ish. Now I'm sure that's going to change as things continue to adjust, especially on this logs line as the vehicles start to spread out a little more evenly and things become more consistent. I do believe that rate is going to change. And now I know we could just bump up the line rate to match whatever the maximum here is, so with 2 of these industries up to 800, but I just don't think these horses are really worth it to max that out. I think once we get the next vehicle up, or even once we start getting into the steam trucks, then we might try to chase that higher rate. But I just don't think it's worth it to cram this road with 200 plus horses just to max out the rate from these industries. Now coming down to our train, this is going to get very complicated as the rate does run at 63. However, it is split between 2 resource types, so really what we would have to do if we wanted to get really exact is take the total number of these cars, so I believe that's 11, figure out what ratio is planks, and then use that ratio for this rate here, and that would be the rate for planks that's being delivered. But I don't know if I want to get that detailed, especially with this train. I'm not sure how many we're going to get running on here, but I think we'll want 2 or 3 of these going back and forth on this line. And I actually think just to sort of help out a little bit more and make this somewhat simple, we'll add another flat car here. And so now we have, I believe it's 8 flat cars and 4 box cars. So that ratio is pretty simple to keep track of. Now one thing we haven't done is place our train depot, but before we do that, I think I want to add a double tracked section here in the middle, and this is where we'll have 2 trains going. I don't think we'll I don't think we'll push up to 3 at the moment, but I think here, somewhere around here, we can split off into 2 sets of tracks. So we'll do it like so, and pretty much just follow this all the way over until where it starts to turn. So we'll continue following this around, and then right about here is where we'll come and split back in. And so then all we'll need to do is add a set of signals here, and a set of signals out here. And then we can place our train depot, which I think we'll place a little bit more nicely down here, right where our road depot is. And this isn't going to be final, because I'm not a huge fan of where it's placed, but then we'll just connect this up to the tracks, just like so. And then we can now duplicate this train, and it's actually in pretty much the perfect location to duplicate it. Looks like we might need a little bit more money to do that, as this train's probably close to 2 million in terms of how much it's worth. Alright, now we were able to duplicate the train. It is going to have to wait for this one to leave before it will start going on its journey, but once this is all cleared out, hopefully our trains will get spaced out pretty evenly, and then we'll be starting to make some pretty good money from this line. And now the last thing we need to do is check the line rates on our delivery routes. So, for instance, the one heading into Santa Rosa is only at a rate of 23, while the city can actually handle up to a rate of close to 80. So that's something we need to adjust, although I think we got rid of our road depot. So let's find a good spot to place that down. And so again, we'll want this line rate up closer to 80, which is what the city requires. And as soon as we get some shipment in from somewhere, we should be able to afford this. We just need to give it a few seconds. And with a nice even 14 vehicles, that gets our rate for Santa Rosa up to 80. And then over here, this one's going to be a little trickier because we need to figure it out by how many tools is coming in by train. And because it's exactly 1/3 of our total things, of our total cars coming in through here, if we take this rate and we find whatever 1/3 of that is, we end up about 46-ish. Looks like this rate is fluctuating a bit while our trains are moving around, but if we take a look at Lincoln, that's a little bit under what we want. So I definitely think getting a third train or even adjusting these a little bit more is something we're going to have to keep an eye on in the future. But if we take a look at the overall line rate, we're sitting at about 26. So I think if we just duplicate that, a rate of 50 will be fine. Or even if we sell a couple of these, a rate closer to 42 I think would be a lot better suited for what we have. And so I know our train is currently our bottleneck on here, so come next episode, after we've built up a bit of money, extending the double tracks, probably station to station, and then getting a third train on here is going to be our #1 priority. But if we take a look at everything we've done so far, this line looks like it's actually losing a bit of money, but that could be due to all of this buildup, which, yeah, this is definitely part of the problem. And I wonder if we can add like an unload stop and have this connected. Let's see if that's something that's possible. So yeah, it doesn't look like we can do that. So I think maybe we just sell a bunch of our horses, and that will probably start to even things out a bit more. But we do know if we wanted to push these numbers a bit higher, we're going to have some trouble doing that. And so managing this traffic jam is something that we're going to have to deal with. Obviously, some of these are probably from the tool line that we just added a bunch of vehicles to, but the fact that it is happening is something that we should be aware of. Now, part of this bottleneck could be due to the fact that this stretch of road only allows 2 vehicles in at one time, as well as this. So you see our trucks are pretty much stopping at each intersection, even though they don't necessarily have to. They have more than enough space to just come right in and go. So maybe it's just a layout thing that we might want to adjust later. Maybe we give the tools line its own stop somewhere. That's just something we'll have to figure out logistically, but once our vehicles space out a bit more, this shouldn't be an issue. But let's take a look at our cities now, and we can see Santa Rosa is certainly getting tools. And then over here in Lincoln I believe is just starting to finally get some tools. So that is very promising in terms of growth. I am concerned about this line not making much money because the route isn't entirely straightforward. It kind of dips down here and then follows the river. So maybe if we don't end up making a lot of money from this when it's fully operational, we might shorten this up a bit and make it a little bit more direct. But I think for now, a lot of the money potential hinges on getting more trains between the sawmill and the tools factory. And so let's finish this off with a much closer look at everything we've done so far in this video, and then when we come back we'll talk about potential projects for next episode, and then also take a look at some of the stuff we've done over at Houston and see how that's doing. So coming over to Houston, we can see the city is growing in very well. I'm very happy to see the city sort of filling in the grid, although I'm not entirely sold on how small it's making these. So I think we might delete these and lock all the roads around it, so the city has some space to breathe. Like, sizes like this is pretty good, but we certainly don't want this filling our entire city grid. And if we take a look at the size, it's up to 433, and you can see it really bounced back from when we reset the grid, and it looks like it might finally be flattening out for a moment. And then as for our lines over here, let's just see how our horses are doing. We're sitting at a nice even 300 for the rate, pretty consistent in terms of profits through there. Our boat lines, which is what I'm most interested to see, you can see here way more money is being made than before. We're averaging, it looks like, 300 to 400,000 per financial period on this line. And then if we take a look at these ships out here, this is making us a ton of money, as it's pretty much only ever moving a full load of resources. It looks like they're slightly off pace on frequency, so we only get this big spike every other period, but we're still earning money on the ones where we're not. And so in terms of what's next, I think we're almost at the point where passenger travel might be something we can start considering. So maybe we get a passenger train from Houston to Salt Lake City, or Houston to Portland, or Salt Lake City to Portland. Something over there might be interesting. We could also come through and start bulking up these lines so we can start getting more grain to the food processing plant and feeding these cities a bit more, as some of them are starting to take on a third resource. Houston here starting to ask for construction materials. And we do have some other cities that are somewhat close together that we could connect up in the future for passenger travel, such as Allentown to Lowell. That could just follow the riverside here and probably be a pretty cheap line. However, we'd probably need to increase the size of this city before we thought about doing that. And then, of course, there's these cities over here, although there doesn't seem to be any really good passenger connections between them yet, although Tacoma and Lincoln could be linked by a boat connection, although I don't know if that's necessarily something we want to do right now since the boats are pretty slow. But anyway, let me know down in the comments what you want to see next. If you want to see some passenger connections, let me know that. If you don't really want to see that and you want to see some more of these industry chains being made, let me know as well. And so with that, that's pretty much going to be it for this video. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.